On this episode, we look at the problem of restrooms at the Huntington Metro Station in Fairfax, Virginia. Then we talk with the president of Walk-Bike Nashville. The Virginia Bicycle Federation would like to see policy changes by the Virginia Department of Transportation. Finally, the Virginia Secretary of Transportation announces policy changes for pedestrians and bicyclists. Stay tuned. We're in Fairfax, Virginia, talking with Bob Brubaker, who's a director of MetroPed. What is MetroPed?
MetroPed is an advocacy organization that basically tries to root out public policy that is an impediment to pedestrian-type activities, one of which would be taking mass transit.
We're at the Huntington Metro Rail Station. There's a group of people looking around this afternoon. Who were they and what were they doing?
Well, there were Metro officials and some elected officials that are on the WMATA board, and what they're interested in doing is looking at putting an automated toilet in one of the back corners here of this station as a pilot test to get some idea what it would be like and what kind of usage they would get if they started more openly allowing patrons to use restrooms when they're using the transit system.
What's Metro's current policy on the public using restrooms in the stations?
Metro, as you've probably seen here, Metro does have state restrooms at these stations. They're fairly large in some cases. Their policy right now is that the restrooms are locked and that the patrons are supposed to ask the station manager for access. They say that only in rare occasions would they expect anyone to be denied, but what's really happening is that many times station managers deny patrons access for no reason. They just say they don't have restrooms. And that leads to people that would have any concern, that have any kind of medical problem that requires them to frequently need a restroom to just avoid taking Metro Rail. And for that matter, mass transit in this area, because it can get to be a pretty long trip till you wait for the bus, get the bus up to here, and take a transfer on the Metro system, and then maybe get a bus somewhere else and get off the bus and then take a who knows how long a walk. It can get to be pretty lengthy for some commuters.
What's the biological need for using the restroom? What do people need?
Well, some people can go quite a long time. The latest statistics that are out say that, and I think I'm probably talking about from a standpoint of bladder problems, that the average person goes between once every hour to once every 6 hours. And for even the average person that does it once every hour, that's kind of a problem on some of the trips. But then you get those that small percentage of people that have to use a restroom more than once an hour. Even if it's not all the time, even if it's just sometimes they get into an urgent need, they fear using a mass transit system that doesn't provide restroom access.
We're in Nashville, Tennessee, talking with Glenn Warner, who's president of Walk-Bike Nashville. What is Walk-Bike Nashville?
We are a citizen-based group at this time, all volunteer organization, and our mission is simply to create a walkable, bikeable, livable Nashville. And we're obviously investigating every possible avenue that we can do that. We started through education, brought in some expert speakers from around the country to educate ourselves, first of all, but also to educate government officials, politicians, the general public, working with the media to try to get the message that our city is in dire need of these improvements.
How many different governments do you have to work with to try to get improvements made?
Okay, Nashville has a combined city and county, so fortunately we only have one government agency to deal with there. And then on top of that, there is the state of Tennessee, namely the Department of Transportation, that we also are starting to deal with. Traditionally, we've been working more on the local level. In actually recent months, we've realized on a couple of our U.S. highways that we definitely need to develop a better relationship at the state level. And I think as other groups are finding, we have a very good relationship at the local level, and all the government officials know who we are and respect us. At the state level, it's much harder, and we're learning that the hard way right now.
What sort of activities are you able to do with your members and with the community at large?
Well, we obviously do some of the more common ones you'll find other groups doing. Walk Your Child to School Day has been a big success. We're a partner with several other organizations. A health and wellness team is the primary sponsor, but we certainly get involved with that. We also do a Bike to Work Day as well, Walk for Active Aging. And these are, again, to encourage people to walk and also to highlight the needs for issues like, better sidewalks. Again, we've brought in some experts like Dan Bird and Bill Wilkinson to talk to us and kind of help spread our message.
And you have both walking and bicycling. How well has that worked for your group?
For us, I think it's worked great. Our group was founded about 4 years ago, and at our first few meetings, our group was founded by a former council member, David Kleinfelter, who was very much a walking advocate. I kind of came in more from the bicycle side, and it was a little awkward at first, but I would say within the year, I was as much of a walking advocate as anybody else in the group, and other people, board members that don't ride a bike, when we're out leading a fight for a bike lane, they're with us 100%. I hope more around the country that we'll see that these two modes are really can benefit each other, and that we shouldn't at all be at odds with each other.
Cities coming out with a new plan for sidewalks and bikeways. What would be the role of your group in supporting that plan or seeing it through to completion?
Well, I think we're very important to start off as a cheerleader. Nashville has allocated this for 2003 $20 million for sidewalks, which for a city of 600,000 is, I think it's huge. We are thrilled with that. Much of that money will have to go to fixing our existing sidewalks, making them wheelchair accessible. Our job is really to make sure that the money is well spent, that we follow our plan. Also, as roads are improved and things like that, we need to kind of hopefully work in partnership with the Nashville government. I've heard other groups from other cities where they get a call from the director of public works asking their opinion, and we're starting to get there on the local level. Obviously on the state level we're nowhere near there right now, but it's much easier to work within government, I think, than to be kind of fighting against it. But if we don't get what is needed to make our city safe, we're certainly willing to raise our voice and be heard.
The Thunderhead Alliance is going to have a regional meeting of bicycle advocates down in New Orleans this spring. What's the state of bicycle advocacy and pedestrian advocacy in this part of the country, outside of Nashville and outside of Tennessee?
Okay, well, the Thunderhead Alliance is a group we recently joined. I went to their meeting in Minnesota this fall, and they're a coalition of local and state organizations to make bicycling, better and safer in this country. When I first went, I said, well, we're a pedestrian and bicycle organization, and the executive director said, well, everything that we're talking about can equally apply to either side as far as spreading the message. So I did go, and it was extremely helpful and very important to network with other organizations with budgets of $800,000, which is kind of mind-boggling for me. But back to your question about in the Southeast, I think our huge issue that we can really talk about in the Southeast is health. The obesity rate in Tennessee is like near 23%. Very few children walk to school or ride a bike to school. And it's growing. I think Men's Health rated Nashville as one of the worst cities for health. So we have, I think, a lot that we can talk about on that front. And we'll probably discuss that. As far as clean air and emissions, that's very important to a lot of us, but it's not a really strong issue in the South. And I'm trying to let our organization look at, what politicians and the public, what message is going to resonate with them. And it doesn't really matter which one it is. We're all trying to achieve the goal of making this city a better place to walk. But I think the health issue by far in the South is the best one to work with.
We're at Lee Highway and Nutley Street in Fairfax County, Virginia, talking with Alan Muchnick, who's president of the Virginia Bicycle Federation. What is the Federation?
The Federation is a nonprofit bicycle advocacy organization. It consists of bicyclists and businesses and bicycle clubs throughout Virginia that are working to improve bicycling and walking in Virginia.
And you've got a 6-point proposal. What's that all about?
We've had a 6-point position paper for reforming the Virginia Department of Transportation's policies for accommodating and funding bicycling and walking in Virginia. There are 6 policy changes that could occur without legislation, but if necessary, we're proposing that people sponsor legislation to achieve these objectives.
Okay, what are the 6?
The 6 objectives are: number 1, routine accommodation, that Virginia Department of Transportation should follow federal highway guidance to routinely accommodate bicycling, walking, and highway construction projects unless exceptional circumstances exist. So that's our first policy principle, that we'd like them to the department to establish guidelines to conform to that policy.
What do they do now? They're building a new road. What do they do about bikes and peds?
They accommodate by exception. Actually, what they say that it's up to the locality to provide, to plan for facilities for bicycling and walking in their transportation plans, and if those facilities are in a particular highway project area, then they will provide them in the project, providing that the locality, the local government agrees, the local governing body agrees to this in a written resolution and agrees to pay half the construction costs.
Okay, not quite routine accommodation.
Yeah.
Number 2.
Number 2 is to provide funding equity. That currently, at least on what VDOT considers the primary and secondary highway system, which are all the roads except the minor roads in municipalities, that they will only pay for half of the construction costs, and that the other half of the construction costs of pedestrian and bicycle facilities need to be provided by the locality. So the locality needs to sign a written resolution agreeing to pay these costs before they will approve the project. VDOT will approve the facilities.
Number 3.
Number 3 is to amend their policy so that they will provide standalone, they will fund standalone pedestrian and bicycle facilities. The current policy, or at least the policy up until recently, was that they would only fund pedestrian and bicycle facilities in highway corridors or street corridors if a concurrent highway construction were occurring. And in the absence of that, there was no way to for a locality to get funding to build a missing sidewalk segment, for instance. It would have to wait until the road was going to be widened. So there was a that policy was amended last year by legislation. Senator Whipple from Arlington introduced a bill that said that it is not against the law for the department or the Commonwealth Transportation Board to fund such projects separately from concurrent highway construction. So the policy was recently amended by the Commonwealth Transportation Board, the governing body of VDOT, that they will consider funding projects separately from highway construction projects. But we still don't have any guidance as to how they will consider that.
And I take it no examples of them actually building something separate from a highway.
Well, other than separate federal highway programs like transportation enhancements or CMAQ, where projects were designated for such. Other than that, generally they will not provide any funding. And in Virginia, the state highway money from the state it's partly from the state gas tax, but the state highway trust fund is partly funded by a half-cent sales tax that 0.5% on the 4.5% state sales tax is dedicated to transportation projects, yet there's no routine accommodation for pedestrian and bicycle facilities.
Okay, the number 4.
Number 4 was to provide dedicated funding for pedestrian and bicycling standalone projects. Currently, the only funding that's really available is the Transportation Enhancements Program, which has not really funded that many projects that would provide pedestrian and bicycle facilities for everyday travel. But we would like to see, for instance, a Safe Routes to School program funded, Safe Routes to Transit, other types of funding programs that are dedicated, for instance, to pave shoulders or to provide missing sidewalks, that would provide for standalone projects for retrofits separately from concurrent highway construction. And currently there is no dedicated program in Virginia.
So that basically would, number 3, they'd be allowed to spend money on it. Number 4, they actually would have money to spend.
They would actually have a dedicated program or more than one program for it, right.
Number 5.
The number 5 really concerns just bicyclists. We want a rational policy and a public participation process for banning bicycling from what are called controlled access highways, which is not just freeways, but they can be even roads like Lee Highway here, where property owners can't build entrances willy-nilly. Currently, the bicycling can be banned without any public input, with any rhyme or reason, and it's something that we've been asking for a long time, is to have a particular safety reason for banning bicyclists and to allow bicyclists to comment at a public hearing process.
Finally, number 6.
Number 6. What is number 6? Now I forget. We want regional bicycle and pedestrian advisory committees, meaningful ones, at both at the regional level, at the VDOT construction district level, and also statewide. We think that pedestrian and bicycle advisory committees are part of a good pedestrian and bicycle program, and it's just one aspect of a real functioning pedestrian and bicycle program. They need to have citizen input.
Once again, is that something that requires legislation, or could they just do it?
They could do it, and in fact, they have done it voluntarily in one of the 9 districts in Hampton Roads. They've had what they call payback, the Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee in Hampton Roads for a number of years. We've had legislation introduced in the General Assembly twice for regional bicycle advisory committees, and that part of it was either removed from the legislation, or more recently it was narrowly defeated by just a few votes because the legislators were told that legislation wasn't required. However, we're still waiting. Tom Farley, we want a bicycle advisory committee in Northern Virginia.
So overall, what is it that the 6 points would accomplish if VDOT actually carried them out?
The 6 points would provide better procedures for accommodating and funding bicycling and walking in our highway corridors, and it would lead over time to the creation of more walkable and bicycle-friendly communities throughout Virginia.
Last week, I sent a memo to Philip Chiquette, the VDOT Commissioner, that outlines the goals that I think should serve as a foundation for VDOT's updated bicycling and pedestrian policies. I shared the contents of that memorandum with with WABA, the Washington Area Bicycling Association. Is that right, Alan?
Pretty close.
Okay. What did I get wrong? Bicyclist Association. Last Thursday at a great meeting in Arlington, and I wanted to just review those goals with you. And I want to say that I personally take these goals and these aspirations very seriously, and I made it very clear to Philip Chiquette, VDOT, that I have no reason to believe that they won't be implemented. But let me share them with you, because they are goals that groups like yours have been fighting for years. And being the former politician that I have been, I think it takes an environment where you don't have a lot of money to do things differently. You know, if you have your own family budget has a crisis, it makes you reevaluate things. If we had a lot of money pouring in to VDOT and just keep doing business the way we'd always done business, we would miss some opportunities. And so I really think that the time is right for people who can affect and influence transportation policy in Virginia to seize that opportunity to make the kind of changes that would give us a broader perspective. And those goals are, and I'll just try to briefly summarize them. First, that non-motorized transportation should receive the same consideration as motorized transportation in the planning, design, construction, and operation of our transportation network. Second, that bicycle and pedestrian accommodations should be included in the design work of all new highway facilities and all major highway reconstruction efforts, unless there are special circumstances that exist which would effectively prevent including bicyclist or pedestrian accommodations, and there are occasions where those special circumstances, I think, could exist, or where a local governing body, by formal resolution, states that it doesn't want or can't afford or has chosen not to include bicycle or pedestrian accommodations in a particular project. It would take a formal resolution. Third, that access to the entire transportation system should be improved for bicyclists and pedestrians. To achieve that goal, I've asked VDOT to take a look at all of the existing restrictions that affect bike and pedestrian access to our highway facilities. And I'm reminded of the question posed to me a couple months ago: why can't we take a bike on the wonderfully wide Willie Bridge in Richmond, and yet we have open season on the narrow Huguenot Bridge in Richmond? We'll get an answer to that. Fourth, that our current formulas and procedures for funding bicycle and pedestrian facilities, including the design, construction, maintenance, and operation, should be reviewed and should be amended to ensure that those facilities are treated in the same fashion as our traditional highway projects. There should be no bias against bicycle or pedestrian facilities. The fifth thing I have asked Philip Chiquette to follow up on is that his department, VDOT, identify and develop recommendations for amending any provisions in the statutes, in the Virginia Code, that either hamper including bicycle or pedestrian accommodations in highway construction or maintenance projects, or provisions that prohibit the use of state or federal transportation funds for standalone bicycle or pedestrian construction projects. Now, if we can get a bill through the General Assembly next year that puts bicycling on a more level playing field, then that's exactly what we should try to do. And again, in doing so, our message to legislators is that there simply should be no bias against bicycle or pedestrian facilities in the law. And finally, that VDOT should ensure that all activities are appropriately coordinated at the statewide and VDOT district levels, including the appointment of focused district advisory councils for pedestrian and bicycle issues. And I understand I understand we have a great advisory committee here in the Hampton Roads District, and we need to make sure that that takes place elsewhere in Virginia. I've asked Commissioner Chuquette to develop an implementation plan for these policies by the end of this year. And most of these policies to be in place, most of the new policies to be in place by the end of the year. We need your comments and your help. I believe that a lot of you have some very strong contacts within VDOT, and I hope that you will help lead the effort to initiate this shift in thinking. And I think that that kind of support from groups like yours will help encourage within that huge organization a number of these positive changes. Now, I began this evening as part of my warm-up act for Ann, talking about how opportunities come out of challenges of the growing demands upon our transportation system for more infrastructure, the demands of working in an environment of constrained finances, of greater accountability and thinking differently or thinking more broadly about the kind of transportation system that we want for our citizens in the future. And I think that these type of initiatives I mentioned are the very kind of opportunities that come about in challenging times. I want to close by quoting a friend of mine that I used at Alan Munson's group last week, which really says much better than I can say, being from Southside Virginia, about how I feel about the kind of system we ought to have in the Commonwealth in the future. And that individual said, transportation has no other purpose than to serve other ends, because transportation is not an end in itself. Rather, transportation is about connecting, revitalizing, and building communities. It's about creating places and spaces to help make people safe, prosperous, and happy. Transportation is about providing the basis for neighborhoods and communities that function well, serve their people, respect their heritage, and offer new and enlarged opportunity.
Visit us on the internet at www.pedestrians.org.